world's largest fintech fest, the Global Fintech Fest, organized by Council of India and Fintech Convergence Council, the two councils of Internet and Mobile Association of India, along with National Payments Corporation of India. This fest is presented by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India, Reserve Bank of India, and is supported by Niti Aayog, Startup India, and Invest India. I would also like to take this opportunity to quickly thank our other partners, our platinum partners, Visa, AWS, PhonePe, our diamond partner, Cred, our country partner, Australian government, our track partners, HSBC India and Refinitiv India, and our sessions partner, the UK Government Department of International Trade. The second edition of the Global Fintech Fest revolves around the theme Empowering a Global Digital Economy and provides an in-depth understanding of the latest businesses, policies, investment and technology developments within the fintech landscape globally. With that, it is with great pleasure that I would like to introduce to you our next session. Our next session is a panel discussion on the topic Keeping India Ahead in Digital Payments. And for the same, I would like to welcome our esteemed panelists. Our moderator, Mr. Kamaljeet Rastogi, Chief Executive Officer, Manipal Business Solutions, along with our other speakers, Mr. Ajay Rajan, Senior Group President, Head of Transaction Banking Group, Yes Bank, Reeju Datta, Co-founder, Cashfree Payments, Ms. Sonika Chandra, VP, Consumer Payments, PhonePe. We welcome all of you and thank you for being a part of this panel today. We would request you please post your questions on the chat window on the right-hand side. In case you have any questions or any doubts, our esteemed panel will answer them in the last 10 minutes of the session. Over to you, Mr. Rastogi.
Thanks a lot, Garima, for the introduction. And thanks to you, thanks to PCI and FCC for organizing this event and especially this panel discussion. Right, the organization has been amazing so far, and this panel discussion that you put together, I think the speakers are just fantastic. They come from both sides of the spectrum, if I may call it that way. So really very, very excited to be part of this panel discussion. Also want to thank the audience who have taken time out of the busy schedule to join this. I would really request you to stay tuned in the online model. It's very easy to switch windows, but we really request you to stay tuned in and hear out some of the thoughts and ideas from the panelists. So very, very warm welcome to panelists Ajay, Sonika, Reeju. Really warm welcome. When I got to know of the composition, I was very excited, and I think where India is right now. You're representing, all the sides of it. So the audience would really like to know that, what has brought us here and where are we going in the future, thinking of it after cricket, digital payments is a space that India has become the world champion in, so we should all as practitioners, as even in the audience, I guess there are very many practitioners interested in the space. So we should all be very proud of the government, of RBI, NPCI, banks, and all the fintechs who have actually made this enable. And unlike cricket, where China doesn't participate much, in digital payments, we have beaten even China, right? So it should be extremely proud of it. So to start with, I think we have reached this level of being the global champions. What next? Yes, UPI has been a very big factor in it. So let me start with Sonika, as kind of the opening batsman in the UPI app space. And you're still not out and playing strong with 40% plus market share. What next do you think? How will India keep its leadership in this space?
So thanks for that, Kamaljeet. I think on the question specifically for UPI, I think it's there's still a lot of innings left to kind of borrow from that analogy. I think there's we've just got started in terms of kind of looking at all that we can enable on the platform. I think both from with new use cases coming out, as well as, new types of mandates that are being brought out by NPCI, whether it is around auto pay, recurring payments, subscriptions, right? So newer and newer forms of payments that we can enable and serve better, newer use cases for the, for the customers and for the citizens in the country. I think still a long way to go, as you can imagine, because if we aspire to bring payments to a billion people in the country, there are a lot of different use cases, needs, types of payment methods that can be used. So I think, and along with that, I think for UPI, as it has started to also expand internationally, there's that scope of going international with those payments. And what does that mean for for us from a payment ecosystem in the country as UPI goes international? It is clearly something that has changed the landscape of the payments system in India. And I think given the headroom that we have in terms of growth on that platform, I think there's a long way to go. And I think that is something that that's what we look for, continue to grow. Along with, of course, as I said, that UPI is one facet of it, but I think in India overall, different types of payments are continuing to, will continue to grow as we go along.
Okay, great. Good to hear that that yes, UPI. There's a lot of use cases being still waiting to be developed.
Yeah.
And yes, UPI is more like the infrastructure that is created, and it has already served a great purpose. But yeah, good to hear that there's a lot of headroom still to grow. So Ajay, related question. Payments. There's always a question on the business case of payments per se. So, what do you think, the business case is currently and what it will be? How will companies actually build a business case around payments?
Well, you're actually asking me for the magic mantra, but anyway, I think we can maybe share some insights on this. I think first I would really agree with what Sonika mentioned. UPI, while we've seen immense volumes go through it, but we've only kind of maybe touched the payment part of it, right? So there is a lot more use cases which can be built. UPI is still very, very saving bank linked. I think there is a lot which can be done to link it with credit, for example. Similarly, I think on the cross-border space, where NPCI recently announced their tie-up with the Singapore MAS on the Pay Now engagement. I believe UPI can actually deliver a lot of value even on the cross-border remittances, where we see a lot of friction and delays. I think UPI engagement with all the faster payments models of other countries can bring in a huge amount of innovation there. So I completely agree with Sonika that there are many more innings left, and there can be a lot of more value which can accrue through proliferation of UPI. But having said which, I think comes to the more important question: where is the money to be made? And here I believe that the government has been pushing digital payments as an agenda, to promote more social and financial inclusion. So obviously, making money is not their priority. Inclusion is, right. So to that extent, we see a lot of messaging from the government in terms of subsidizing and also, making payments free and so on and so forth. All that is very rightly so. While some may not agree, but it is very rightly so towards promoting payments. So their objective is not, that people should make money from payments. Their objective is that people should digitize, cash and proliferate more digital payments, right, and get in more transparency and inclusion and so on and so forth. So, which actually brings to the point that okay, fine, all that is okay, but where do you, really make money? So, I'll maybe give the banker's perspective. Reeju, of course, is best suited to give the challenger perspective. But from a bank standpoint, really, for us, payment becomes very ubiquitous. Payments is really becomes only part of the solution for us. Banking and providing other areas of banking linked to payments is really where the business case is, right? So for as a bank, I think what is more important is that how do I use payment as an enabler to get more customers in, to get more volumes in, to get more transaction linkages, and then dovetail the other banking products on it to bring in more investments, to bring in more CASA, and other banking cross sell, which is where as a bouquet, the bank will it will make commercial sense for the bank rather than only depending on that payments will generate the revenue model for me. So that's really from a banking standpoint where we see payments as being more ubiquitous and becoming really giving us the door to engage more with the customer.
Okay, great. No, fantastic to hear that also from you. Yes, I have been pretty fascinated with how our regulators move and how they encourage innovation, by making things free. Like MDR also was reduced, and then UPI came in, and they leave it to industry players like us to find out the business cases.
Exactly.
So that's the interesting part. So I think Reeju, you are also in the middle of all that. So any views from you on the UPI and then the business case for payments?
Yeah, so I think UPI, I think as Ajay mentioned, credit on UPI is kind of, kind of something that we can look forward to as the next big thing, because till now we have seen credit cards is something that UPI has not yet eaten into the share of, and I think the reason is there is no credit on UPI. But with that, it would be quite exciting to see how credit card defends its turf against the UPI. But on the business use case front, I think, there are a lot of, I'll maybe talk about a few new, innovations that we can see that will be very noticeable, right? And they would obviously be business use cases, right? In terms of the revenue model, it is supposed to be a transaction-based fee. So the more transactions you process, you can make a fee out of that. That traditionally has worked in payments, and I think that's going to work even now. But in terms of where we can see, more proliferation of or modern digital payments, I think contactless payments is a big area, right? We have seen a lot of regulations towards that. We have got, tokenization on devices, and we have these acquiring terminals that have been coming up that, support contactless payments. And within that, you can see use cases like, let's say two phones tap and you can, exchange, a payment, right? Like a delivery boy coming. You can have transit payments. Once you start making that interoperable, right? You can have your debit card that also works on let's say your metro. So those are the kind of use cases, and then how do you bring about interoperability? How do you increase the acquiring infrastructure of this? Make sure contactless is available everywhere. So I think definitely that there is a scope for that, and there is also a lot of scope. We are seeing in providing the omni-channel experience, so to speak, now, since all the businesses are across online and offline. So all the online players trying to go offline, or offline players trying to go online. So yeah, so I think the idea is to increase the number of transactions, and then like where you can find that. Right? So right now, omni-channel, contactless, that's where we see a lot of new things happening apart from the traditional online first and offline first payments that are there.
Okay, fantastic. No, credit on UPI. I think the audience and all of us would be very interested to hear more, maybe later in this session. Ajay, coming back to you, as a representative of challenger ecosystem that is being built now.
Well, you touch a very raw nerve here. So, and yes, a lot of questions, keep coming in. Will bank survive? Will fintech survive? Will one need the other? And so on and so forth. Well, I believe all of those are very unfounded, but it's a very relevant, question from the current environment perspective. So, pardon me if I take a little longer on explaining, this one. So, despite all the action happening in the tech fintech space, and really, the emergence of large and very large challenger players. Two of them are here. I strongly believe that traditional banks will continue to play a very critical role in the overall challenger ecosystem. Over the last decade or so, we've seen a lot of collaboration between banks, neobanks, non-banks, fintechs, etc. In simplifying and delivering traditional banking products to customers. And while the overall areas of collaboration have been very contributed to this challenger exposure and reshape the digital payment ecosystem by proper partnering or promoting like-minded partners. I will really take this opportunity to maybe highlight a very classic role model partnership between Yes Bank and PhonePe. It was really a meeting of minds between like-minded partners, and outcome is really for here to see close to 46% of the UPI volumes are jointly going through our both our counters. Similarly, our partnership very early on with a player like a Pay Nearby enabled equally a market leadership on Aadhaar enabled payment systems. More towards financial social inclusion. There are various such examples. Cashfree is a very prominent partner for us as well. Right. So I believe that a right partnership between fintechs and banks can yield the right results. On the softer side, I believe that banks also have the mantle of increasing awareness of financial products and services to the general public by leveraging the established brand, the associated trust, and so on and so forth, right? So it becomes very imperative that we leverage that to evangelize and promote the upcoming fintechs, especially those who are developing solutions towards niche areas where the regulator wants financial social inclusion and so on and so forth, right? So I think for banks to continue to being relevant in this overall environment, it's very important for banks to internalize that banking is important, banks are not. And I think the fintech ecosystem has kind of proven that. Second, that banks should internalize, especially the big banks, that the challenger players are here to stay, right? It's not the question of one eating the other, I think, doesn't exist, right? So they are here to stay, and they are not competition, but they are value accretive to the overall financial ecosystem. So banks have to learn and unlearn, and banks have to adapt to the emerging market dynamics and figure out the most optimal way how this partnership can be worked in, right? Maybe just spend the next 2 minutes on giving three broad themes, where I can bucket, this whole partnership engagement. First is, client and business related engagement. So here it becomes really incumbent on banks and fintechs to constantly upgrade the existing paradigm, look at, newer ways of institutionalizing digitalization, so that the next friction or the next problem which exists in the overall ecosystem can be jointly solved for, right? We've seen a lot of innovation on the B2C space, which is obviously because it's more retail, more prominent, and hence a lot more easier to solve, but I think equal innovation can be done jointly on the B2B space. Right, and that's where also there is a lot of friction. There's a lot of manual intervention, and I believe that that I think can be solved, whether it is on lending, on analytics, or even on providing beyond banking solutions to banking to corporate customers or the MSME customers, right? I'll just give you maybe a live example. We've kind of launched a Yes Connect, which is our banking marketplace, where we've tied up with a lot of tech fins and fintechs and provide banking and non-banking solutions in the same platform to the Yes Bank customer, right? So it's a very classic case of example where it's a partnership model, but providing a 360-degree solutions to both. Similarly, I think the account aggregator can actually foster a lot of such innovations. The second bucket is on the internal efficiencies, where banks have intrinsically started reviewing their internal processes, and they've accelerated their digitization agenda on various use cases. Could be loan management, credit analytics, workflow automation, risk monitoring, and so on and so forth, right? So here again, banks can and are steering and partnering with interested fintechs to provide suitable such solutions. The third is formalization and commercialization of such partnerships. So here, there could be a forward integration and a backward integration towards such collaboration. So banks have already started investing, whether it could be equity investment, it could be mentorship investment, it could be commercial tie-ups, with fintechs and tech fins, to look at how we use them as inorganic acquisition channel to further more business models, to generate more business model and further more revenue, right? So both of these could be done so that it becomes a win-win situation. And finally, I think really would like to congratulate Reserve Bank of India and of course NPCI as well, who have been very very proactive in promoting the healthy partnership, right? So they again have been promoting banks and fintechs to work together. In fact, two sandboxes have already kind of gone live. One is right now currently in progress on cross-border remittances, where RBI is actually urging both players to see how do you work together and create more social and financial inclusion by giving us ideas on how we can maybe tweak the regulations and generate more volumes, but however test it out in a controlled environment, right? So these are very very pragmatic methods in which the regulator is pushing partnership promotion, partnership and innovation. So that's, I think, uh, probably in my perspective, how challenger banks and fintechs in a controlled environment can work together.
Okay, great, Ajay. I fully agree with you in your congratulations to RBI. Typically it is in any industry forum, it is, you complain against the regulator, and I'm sure we also have, Reeju will have some requests to the regulator, which we'll discuss towards the end. Having been part of the fintech industry, I think I have also really appreciated RBI, how they have enabled this collaboration that you talked about, right? Because as normal business people, we will want to compete, right? But yes, RBI has played a very big role in making us collaborate. And your talk about how you're collaborating with PhonePe and with Cashfree and other players, that is a very very I think that's a very big reason for the success of the digital payments in the country. Yeah. Okay, now moving to Sonika, I think it's $1 billion question. What are the success factors for big tech UPIs like PhonePe? What are the right things that you did, and what are the wrong things? And audience would also like to participate in the industry. So, what is it that they can learn from PhonePe's experience?
So then I'll try and summarize in terms of what were some of the key success factors there. I think one of them, Ajay pointed out, one of the key success factors was a successful partnership. I think with a bank that saw was open-minded about seeing the role of fintechs and collaborating on that. I think that is key to being successful in this space, because it was so early on, and you needed somebody to bet on, right? So I think that was definitely one. So having like-minded players in the ecosystem who are willing to partner and explore and build together. I think other than that, I would say the key tenets around what has kind of built PhonePe and continues to drive our growth forward is to focus on the customer, and when I say customer, I mean both the end customer, who's on the platform, as well as the merchants. I think the focus on that experience. So I think the big ease for us, experience and engagement, right? In terms of how we drive that that experience and build a brand that kind of around trust and reliability. So and a lot of that comes from how the systems are built, making sure that whenever people want to use PhonePe, they can use PhonePe. Whatever they want to use it for, they can use it for. Bringing all the relevant use cases for the customers online, right? It's not just about the rails in place, it's about what you use the rails for, what you drive through them. So I think one of the big things for us is constantly, when even now, is continuing to push the envelope on figuring out what are the other things that the customers would need us for. So if I think about the financial needs of a customer during as part of their lives, cycle, right? What are the things that they need to do? They need to send money, they need to spend money, they need to manage the money, they need to grow their money. Do we cover all of those? What are the different types of use cases that that we drive to kind of cover all of those? And I think we have done I think a good job of covering quite a bit of those on our platform, and we are still continuing to do so with a push into providing more and more financial services products, as well as payment products, whether it is bill payments or other things. But the idea is to make sure that the customer the needs are met in a holistic manner. It is not just one or the other. So I think that is one I would say that was really key to making sure that of getting where we are today. I think the other is, of course, acceptance as well. That PhonePe, you can use PhonePe wherever you need to use PhonePe, right? At any merchant, offline, online. You are assured that wherever you are, whether it is on a mountaintop or on a beach or in your home, or not in a city, wherever, whichever the situation is, you're able to use your money digitally, however you choose to. So I think those are kind of the main building blocks of how we kind of build this out, and we continue to do so. I think, like I said, customer experience, customer engagement, making sure that customers understand that I think yesterday our finance minister was talking about data privacy and how critical it is for us, all of us who are in the fintech ecosystem, right, to make sure that we give that basic respect for customer privacy, so they trust and they understand that whatever is being built in the as products, etc., is being built with that basic respect for their data, and that we understand that they're placing this huge trust in us as a company, and we need to respect that. And that's a pact, that's an unsaid pact between the customer and the company, and we need to continue to do so. So I think over years, having demonstrated that through the products that we have put out, and the things that we continue to do at the back end, and making sure that those things are respected throughout the organization, and that we continue to build on those tenets of data privacy, reliability, availability, making sure that the customers' needs are met in all situations. I think is kind of the building blocks of what we are about.
Okay, great. I think that's a good insight. And you mentioned customer word quite a few times. I think that's a great learning. And also, looking at your competition, let's say Google Pay and others. You are way ahead of them. Yes, you had the first mover advantage, but your competition was very, very large and aggressive. You've still managed to stay ahead, and so I think the customer focus thing that you mentioned is the key, and should everybody should keep in mind. Also, you have been a company very focused on payments and on the customer engagement part, right? And you have not diverted. So that also must have resulted in your success. Another question we have is the unique challenge that you are facing of reducing market share. I know it's not an easy question, and none of us have learned how to reduce market share. And you said you will figure it out when you get there. So we'll wait and watch, and all the audience will also wait and watch what you do to implement that limit that RBI has put. That's an interesting challenge for all of us in the industry. So Reeju, Sonika mentioned about offline payments, and then there is contactless payments. I know that you are doing a work in many of these areas, and in the payment space, you have a lot of other options. So what are the new things that we are going to see soon as a mass adoption?
Yep. So I think a contactless, I did mention, right? There's a lot of, and that will be pretty noticeable, right? I mean, you will have people using their phones. Your card would be saved on the phone, and the phone would be tapped anywhere, right? So that is definitely something that will be very visible over the next five years or so as we go on, right? I think there is also a shift towards in the online space specifically, improving the stack on affordability or EMIs, right? Because we've seen that drive a lot of growth in the offline space. I mean, some of the largest offline payment service providers have literally ridden the wave of EMI and affordability. Online, I think there is still a bit of work to do there, and I think a lot of stuff is happening there. I think something that will be less visible, but also kind of happening in the back end is so the volume of online transactions or transactions in general has increased quite a lot, right? I mean, it's many orders of magnitude higher as compared to what it was even 2 3 years back. So, kind of upgrading the backend systems to able to process a larger number of transactions per second. So, I think that's a very big engineering problem. That is happening behind the scenes, and there are companies and including ourselves working on that. So those are a few of the things that is happening. And there is also the PPI wallets, like the re-emergence of the PPI instrument. You have PPIs now, part of the UPI. And what are the use cases that you can kind of enable with that? You can issue credit. Like, I mean, the PPI would be like a proxy for the bank account, and you can just distribute PPIs or wallets, very easily, much easier than banks. And then you can kind of run all kinds of payments and banking services on there, like card issuing, UPI, and other banking services. Lending is one big use case that's happening right now. So yeah, so those are a few of the things that I would say. The most noticeable one would be the contactless that we'll see probably,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Earlier on, you mentioned about credit on UPI. So, would like to hear more from you. What do you have in mind, and what do you, what as a customer, what will we see soon?
Yeah, so I think credit on UPI. So recently, I think banks have probably started issuing overdraft accounts which are backed by UPI handles. So from our point of view as an acquirer, there is not a lot of much difference that we need to do. I mean, it's more from the customer's point of view. So maybe Sonika and Ajay could probably shed more light. But yeah, so it basically means a customer can buy now and pay later, just like they use a credit card. They can have a UPI handle that is backed by credit. So I think the interesting part for banks and even PhonePe there would probably be if banks can outsource the generation of those credit handles beyond to a third party like a fintech, right? And then you can let's say an NBFC is able to issue those things, or PPI wallet is able to issue those things. So that's where you can have a proliferation or large number of UPI OD accounts as we speak. So I think I think Sonika and Ajay might be better people from an acquirer's point of view. All the infrastructure is in place, and we'll just ride
Right.
that
Right.
wave.
Yeah, just one more question to you, then I move back to Ajay, is on card on file. There's a recent RBI circular on that.
Yeah.
So, how do you think that is going to affect the digital payments? Is it going to increase, reduce, or how is the industry going to react to it?
Yeah, so I think the effects of that we're already seeing. So essentially, all your saved cards till now that won't, we won't be able to use that, right? We'll have to redo that card saving process. That's something that is being done from the ground up. I think we are working with the card networks, right, who are, on file, the only people who can tokenize. Recently, banks got added also to the list. So there is work being done there. I think what it means is that recurring transactions are slightly harder, especially using cards. But I think recurring transactions in itself was not a very big share of the market, hardly 2 3 4% at best, right? So that is the part that is affected, and then we'll see how that picks up after a while. I think card saving for one-time transactions, that is like a bigger problem. So let's say you had saved your card on Amazon and all, right? That probably will probably see a problem. So we'll figure out. I think as of now, no one is prepared, and I think everyone is grappling with the issue. But all the cards that you have saved till now, I think that's a reason.
Okay. Okay. So, you're saying it's not that big an issue. I mean, the market share is pretty less, though obviously convenience point of view, yes, it is, but industry will figure out a way.
I mean,
So,
card saving is an issue. Yeah, recurring payments is much smaller.
right. Yeah. So Ajay, coming back to you, this whole open banking, and Reeju also mentioned APIs for credit and all. How do you see the implementation of open banking reshaping the banking industry vis-a-vis fintech and payments?
See, overall, if you look at, traditionally banking has been a very transactional affair, right? With each bank, financial institution, they've been using their own data models to assess customers' creditworthiness, and in the on the go, the institutions have been sitting on a wealth of data, which could have actually not only been used to take financial decisions, but also actually give tailored solutions to the end customers, right? So that's really what traditional banking was supposed to do. Now there are obviously there's been a gap between expectations and delivery. So which is where I think open banking kind of comes in. And really what open banking does is it democratizes this data with the help of third party partners, and it enables access to the banking data of the customers to various financial institutions using APIs, right? So that's really what open banking does. Now this is where I think various new partners, neobanks, account aggregators, all of them will actually play a very critical role in leveraging this whole open banking and reshaping, in my view, the banking use case. Predominantly, I think a lot of it, the impact will come into individuals. It will come into MSME space, which is where the government is also looking at I think providing more access and providing more inclusion, right? So in my view, it can be split into two umbrellas: one where open banking will be used for decision making, and the second where open banking will be used for transactions. So on the decision making, I think account aggregator initiative has just kind of been launched. So here I think the AAs will really assimilate data and provide a 360-degree view of the customer's financial detail. Of course, it will be consent based, and this is how the banks, the lenders, or other financial institutions will use this data and analytics to give more competitive pricing, more enhanced user experience, or more curated solutions, in my view, to the customers. The second is where open banking for transactions, and which is where your neobanks, your PSPs, your business solution providers will use such channels to augment their offering, and again work with banks to provide very very curated and sniper based solutions, which could be related to banking, which could be related to beyond banking. So from a customer standpoint, they actually see only a platform. Now behind that, there could be various tie-ups between banks and neobanks, so that from the customer standpoint, they get all their solutions on only one platform. So yes, if you ask me, it is really going to reshape the way banking does. And again, I will bring back my earlier statement which I made, that banking is going to be critical. Banking will not. Banks will not. So it's all about I think how this partnership works to leverage the most of this initiative.
Great. Okay. I can see a lot of questions coming in. So we'll keep some time for that. But no panel discussion can be complete without asking something to the regulator, right? That's our duty. That's how we have reached so far. So Reeju, maybe starting with you, and Sonika, what is it that you need more from the regulators in the digital payment space?
Yeah, I think we need the regulator to foster innovation and competition. I think those would be the basic asks, and I think we're seeing a lot of that, right? I mean, sure, there are things we always discuss with the regulator. Okay, this is something that we want or can be improved, but I think we need to point to the regulatory sandbox. I think that Ajay just mentioned, and we are a part of that, right? And we have interacted with the RBI there, and I think it's been a phenomenal interaction. It was just like like pitching to a venture capitalist, right? The entire process of the sandbox, it was very well managed, professionally run. The right questions were asked, and I think they were very knowledgeable, right? And they were available. So I mean, more things like that, right? And we are able to experiment with use cases that we wanted to always, but were never able to. So yeah, I mean, and more like that. And differences of opinion, I mean, obviously the regulators word is the final. We keep petitioning them from time to time, how they can go. So there is the PAPG guidelines that have come up, again, very well drafted. Right. So in general, I think the regulator is really in the thick of things and making the right decisions for the ecosystem, I would say. So no complaints as of now. A lot of
Okay.
yeah.
Good. I'm sure Sonika, as a big tech challenger, you would have some complaints or some requests to the regulators.
So I think no specific asked at this forum, but I think overall, I mean, I do concur with Reeju that I think it has been a collaborative environment to work with. I think that, of course, from a I think as part of the ecosystem, we are all coming at it from our, from our different points of views, and I think they've done a pretty good job of kind of balancing, you know, what everyone needs to keep a healthy, viable ecosystem going. I think that's definitely there, and I think having those channels of dialogue open and understanding that there is this constant interaction and back and forth that happens. I think is what we what we would ask for, and that is what is happening. So I think that's the main thing. I think where it would be a concern is if we would feel that a voice was not being heard, or that we are not being included in the conversations, or that nobody is listening to what the fintech players or the challenger brands, or even that are facing in the market. So I think that's not the case. And I think, look, everything ultimately has to be talked out and figured out, and I think we are all figuring it out as we go. So I think the max we can ask for is, like, having a seat at the table and making sure that our points of views is heard, and that there's a conversation around it, and that it's not just it's not a one-sided street, which it's not. So I think we're thankful for that.
Okay. Good. I think regulators would love that. That even challenger players are having no complaints or are happy. So I think that resounds with the point that we are making, that they have played a very big role in where we are. So final question is that who will win, right? At, let's say, 1 year or 5 years from now, will big techs continue batting till the till the end, or banks will catch up, or players like Cashfree who are trying a lot of innovations. So where do we see India 3 to 5 years from now in the digital payment space? Who will win?
If I may, I don't think it's about any of us winning. I think it's about a billion Indians getting access to digital payments. And I think if we can accomplish that, then we all have won. So it's not about either one of us. At least that would be my point of view.
Very nice,
Yeah,
very nice. Ajay?
it's a positive sum
Well,
game. Oh, sorry, yeah, sorry, Ajay.
no, Reeju, please go ahead. Reeju, please go
No,
ahead.
and I was saying it's a positive sum game, right? We're just increasing the size of the market, and like bring about competition and innovation. That's the regulator's job, to create that platform, and we'll deliver. That's the idea. Yeah, Ajay.
Okay. Very good, very good.
Well, in
Ajay?
my view, as much cliche as it may sound, but in my view, I think India will win, and
Okay.
all these supporting actors will actually play a role in that, because end of the day, while we all may have our commercial or other interests, but eventually it is all aimed at how do you proliferate more digital payments within the ecosystem. And I think that's the collective responsibility of whether it is the big tech or fintech or techfin or banks, or whoever that you may say. All of them are working towards the same objective. So if we meet that common objective, I think India will win. So that's, I think, should be really where we will all go to.
Fantastic. I think that's a great thought. India will win. And yes, so there's collaboration, there's competition, there's regulation, but it's all leading to that. And globally also, India is being looked upon as a leader, right? I mean, like in the global fintech fest, and people are trying to learn from us. So it's again a very unique position we are in that in a high tech industry. People want to learn from us. So yes, India will win. Great, fantastic. So we'll move on to some of the questions. Let me just pick a few. Okay, there's a question on B2B digital payments, Ajay, for you. What kind of innovations do you envisage in the B2B digital payment space? From Ratan Chok.
See, on the B2B, as I had mentioned very briefly, right? So there is, it is still a area where I think there exists still a lot of friction. and which can be worked on. If I broadly talk about few areas, cross-border payments, as I had mentioned in my session as well, is still largely a manual, process-oriented kind of a model. So there could be innovation, which can kind of be further built on it. So there is RBI has already done a lot of digitization through IDPMS, EDPMS, and so on and so forth. But I believe that there could be a lot of innovative solutions on top of some of these enablers that the Reserve Bank has created to work on customer enhancement, as well as fraud risk mitigation and so on and so forth. I believe that supply chain financing and also analytics based lending be more enhanced. It is still I think very targeted towards maybe a certain spectrum of clients. I believe that with proper curation, there could be a lot more innovation and lot more proliferation which can come in the lending space, lending cum payment space on the B2B side. So these broadly two areas I think could be where could be a lot of innovation.
Okay, we'll just take one last quick question. How digital solutions are transforming payments in the post-pandemic or pandemic world? So maybe Sonika, you and Reeju can answer that quickly.
Yeah, sure. I think, we've all seen that, during the pandemic, and hopefully now we are in the post-pandemic zone. I think digital payments, of course, definitely spiked, and, people first were, I think some were forced to kind of use the digital modes of payment. But I think as they get exposed to it, and, they understand the convenience and the use cases around it. So I think it has definitely, we've seen a massive uptake in terms of, people kind of using digital payments more and more, forms of payments and different use cases as well. I do feel in the post-pandemic though that as we continue to, if you have to grow at the scale that we need to, because like I said, there's a lot of headroom there, right? I think there is this trifecta of tech, infra, and policy that has to kind of come together to really give us the next step jump to kind of really get in the next zone there. Right now we are still all playing in that area where it's the 150 to 200 million consumers who are kind of participating in this. But like I said, if we have to build something for or get something to be used by 1 billion Indians, then it will require that step jump. So for me, in my mind, the tip really is tech, infra, and policy has to come together to really take us forward.
Okay, great, fantastic, excellent. I think we are up on time. So thanks a lot, Ajay, Sonika, Reeju, and Garima for organizing this. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Rastogi, and thank you to all the panelists for being a part of this session. It was indeed very insightful, and it was pretty interactive because we took questions from the audience as well. Also, for the delegates and for the panelists, if you get the chance, you can become a proud owner of the RuPay on the go. So if in case you visit the NPCI booth, which is on our platform, you can apply for our complimentary RuPay on the go device. So please do check it out. And we'll be back with yet another exciting session shortly. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rastogi. Thank you, Sonika. Thank you, Ajay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.